Looks right. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. We've got a review of the agenda. Everybody took a look at it. We're good to go. Any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, move along. We're going to adopt the previous minutes. Was there anything in previous minutes that anybody wants to speak of? Jim?
If I may, I'd like to know how the water tower assessment came out and the SEMA modeling project for the alternative source of water and water treatment plant review, if there was any more information on that.
Katie?
Yes, with regard to the water tower, that hasn't been completed yet. That's still in the works. We are going out to tender. We didn't want to do it. It wasn't wise to do the wells and drain the tank at the same time. So the decision was made to first conduct the project on the wells and then move forward to the water tank. So that's coming. I believe Chris will have that as part of our meeting tomorrow as to update us where we're at, and unless you have an update now for that tender and what the dates are looking like.
Yeah, I can speak to that now or later to relate, Katie, but
Sure.
For the water tower itself, I'm hoping to get that tender out at the end of next week and, get them looking at it, early November. They can do that in the cold weather. It's all remote operated work, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Perfect. And then with regard to the SEMA, that's an ongoing project. We're not quite there yet with that one. It's an ongoing process and collecting data for that work that's continuing. But so far to date, I think I can speak for both Carla and Chris, and feel free to jump in. But our meeting with the wastewater plant with SEMA was positive. There is some scenarios that will work moving forward. We're going to continue to work with SEMA and bring a plan forward to council on avenues of correcting and enhancing our capacity at both plants.
Thanks for that, Katie. Does anybody else have anything under previous minutes? Seeing none, move on to the PUC. Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor
Sorry, I was going to move on the agenda, and I was going to second on the adoption of the previous minutes.
Yeah, okay. Let's go ahead and do that. And Jim, you'll be the seconder and mover on the other two. So public presentations, pardon me, PUC presentation. Paula, you're up. No, sorry, Carla, you're up. Go ahead, Paula, you give it a shot.
Good morning. I'm not able to share my screen, Pam. Okay, thank you. Okay, I believe our last meeting was on June 9th. So this will discuss action since then. On water treatment and distribution, we had an annual maintenance for all generators by our fleet department, June 9th and 10th. We completed spring UDF utilizing our Blind River staff. We had two experienced operators come from the Sioux and give them 2 days of training, and then they continue throughout the week and actually into the next week. We did have an event where we had an AWQI for loss of pressure at Development Drive. The guys kind of learned a lesson from this, but they were trying to bring up the residual and continued on with UDF on the south side of the highway. And basically we put North Shore Power and Leroy's out of water. So we reported it to Paula and the MOE, Spills Action Center, took 2 sets of samples as required, and they both came back non-detect. So We're currently still continuing hydrant test operations for each of the hydrants in the system. We had our contractor rebuild the SCADA computers with new licenses and software. There's a couple of things, items to be buttoned up this week. And I also conducted a tour for SEMA of the water treatment plant, the well systems. We went to the elevated tank. Again, Katie said you're waiting on that report. We've collected just recently our Q3 samples for THMs, HAAs, and nitrite and nitrates, and we don't have the results yet. They're in the system. We had sent out a high lift pump for repairs, and we've received that back, and it's ready for reinstallation. Jeremy had replaced a valve actuator for GAC3 filter. We had a planned Hydro 1 outage, and we had operators scheduled to come in for checks and resets as required for all sites. Again, our monthly PMs we carried through with, and we had some pigeon issues this summer and continued cleanup of the front entrance, and we erected some additional pigeon stakes on the beams. So we had a major plant humidity issue this summer. Summer started off dry and then got very, very wet, and there's no HVAC system for the water treatment plant treatment side. There's air conditioning on the admin side, but we actually had a couple scares. We had a couple breakers that actually had water in them, tripping equipment, and we replaced the breakers. We had a rotary disconnect for one of the actuators that had to be replaced. And we ended up bringing a couple commercial dehumidifiers from the Sioux from Windmar, and we had them on site for, I think, a little over a week. We also had damage to the records room in the back workshop. And we actually brought back all of the record storage, so probably about 40 bankers' boxes of notes, and I have my admin staff sorting through it. But we will return with the records that need to be kept on site, but we are going to be recommending some sort of humidity actions for the treatment plant itself. We had an operator respond to a low chlorine event after finding a leak on the sodium hypochlorite system found in the chemical room. It didn't cause a pump failure, and it didn't cause a spill flood alarm, but it did actually, we ended up having to dose the contact chambers. We did our CT calculations. The CT was met, so compliance-wise, everything was okay, but we actually dosed the front end of the clear well as well. And this is something that came up in a risk assessment last year. We haven't completed our risk assessments this year, but since we've gone away from working weekends, we feel that we have a vulnerability because the chlorine's not monitored after we inject it on the front end until it leaves the plant on the chlorine analyzers. And we feel that it may be a good idea to have interim sampling and another analyzer in place, because the plant retention time is usually between 40 and 60 hours. We could get into a situation where we're 2 days through a weekend and not know what the residual is in the clear well. So our operators, when they're here Monday to Friday, they monitor the chlorine contact chambers manually. They do samples twice a day. So again, well 8 was rehabbed, and that's completed. We had the bacteriological results confirmed actually just this week with our local inspector. Patty's called me first thing yesterday morning to let me know she was okay with how we had discussed total coliforms being present as okay because they're goody wells, but the absence of E. coli would be expected. So just yesterday, we got awarded a position for the lead hand operator here in Blind River. It ended up one of our newest hires for the Sault Ste. Marie water treatment plant applied for the Blind River position, and he will be moving here hopefully early October. So we're very happy to fill that position. Unfortunately, we had, after Rick left, we had an operator take it and then leave to Southern Ontario again. So again, Tulloch's tendering the tower inspection. We had previously identified the truck bay radiant heaters requiring third-party maintenance. The fan was making a lot of noise and it's very high. Our staff don't have ladders to access it. But we actually did use the heaters during the humidity issue, and it appears to be operating without any noise now. So, but if we have, I know Jeremy's is looking into the HVAC system at the wastewater plant. Maybe we could have them do some checks here as well. And in discussions with our local inspector, Petty's Durole has said she will be doing the inspection in October. She did not give us a date yet. On the wastewater side, we did the Q2 federal regulations. We have a quarterly report that has to be submitted online. Jeremy hooked up the clarifier rake torque alarms to the auto dialer. We had some raw sewage wet well pump blockages where the raw pumps, basically they're pulling air, but we had to clean them out. We found this because we had such a really dry April and May that the raw wet well was operating at a lower level. It was basically running at a lower level, and we found that the debris in the wet well was causing blockages. So we contracted GFL from Sault Ste. Marie because GFL doesn't have the proper equipment here to clean a property, and they spent a whole day, and they offloaded the debris to the landfill here with Mark's approval, so, and assistance. We had identified a tree at Dawsey as basically windy day. I think part of it had fell on the roof, but sweeping on the fascia, and Public Works took care of that for us. We completed the UV maintenance, and we replaced all the lamps and sleeves for Bank A. That was something that was outstanding for a little while because we're a little bit short-handed. We ended up having Sioux staff assist and got that completed. So ABT, we've been having them hauling sludge every 3rd week, and we've been really utilizing polymer to try and thicken it to offset costs that were increased last year. Again, our wastewater PM activities, generator tests, not on bar screen cleaning, and equipment checks are ongoing. We are continuing to review the effectiveness of the raw water basket in the wet well. We didn't realize until we had the station cleaned that the influent channel is actually going underneath the basket. It's not actually going through the basket. Sorry, 1 second here. Sorry about that. I had to close the door. The guys are making a lot of racket out there. I think North Shore Power might be here. So, where is I? So yeah, that raw water basket, the flow actually comes in underneath it. And because the well is typically higher than that, it does remove debris, but we tried to lower it as low as we could. And there's cement there that we're not allowed, it's not enabling us to lower the basket any further, so. We had an ESA inspection, and there was deficiencies identified at Young Fox Pump Station and at the wastewater plant for the wiring for the scum box valve, and both of those have been corrected. We had a failure of the NAT-on generator during a power outage, and we had our Sault Ste. Marie fleet respond, and they identified an issue with the fuel filter. And it was something that they had to call around and get a lot of feedback on. We ended up setting it to one garage in Sudbury, and the guy was on vacation, got him back as quickly as we could, but we had to order parts for it and get it repaired. And we actually had Kari's out of Deborah on standby for the time that we didn't have the generator online. So a couple of outstanding issues that we've spoke of previously. The leak for the HVAC, Jeremy's plumbing has been there. They still have to come back for follow-up. I followed up with Chris for the comminutor lift. With the cabling that we have, we aren't able to pick it up and clear the concrete, so we're not able to fully lift it out. And Chris was just going to look at the specs that were set up for that. And we also looked into a lift if we had to basically use shorter cables. there's a lifting device that we researched, but it's close to $5,000 to purchase. So, and then we're still hoping to get those engineered sleeves in the concrete for entry to the aeration zones and the clarifier. And we're still looking at skimmer, scrapers, or brushes and the blower noise assessment. So for DWQMS, the municipal drinking water license and permit were extended to January, the end of January, and the financial plan, of course, is requiring an update. Tyler and I completed an infrastructure review, and we wanted to follow up with staff. This is usually something we do a little bit later in the year, but we're planning to do that follow up with them. We had internal audits in July, late July, beginning of August, and we had 0 non-conformances and 11 opportunities for improvement. And our external auditor, Rod Seabrook, that we've dealt with for years, has retired, and we were contacted by SAI Global, and they've scheduled our audit for right after Thanksgiving. And it's an off-site audit, so we'll just be sending the operational plan to them, but we will be dealing with a new auditor. We're a little bit worried about that. So, call outs after the 8th in June. The wastewater plant, we've had quite a few raw wet well alarms. When the power bumps even, or an outage, it trips the raw pumps and we have to go in and reset them. The water plant, we had a low filter conduit level, and the operator was called in, cleaned in the channel and monitored the backwash. We had a UV critical fault, and this was due to extremely high flows. When we go over the rated capacity of the plant, the UV will alarm out. The operator came in and manually operated the raw pumps to try and keep it in the conditions. He also turned on the second UV for proper disinfection. And we also had an extended run time for a transformer failure. And yeah, our staff came in after getting that notification that had been running and contacted Hydro until they were able to come in for that repair. In July, we had 4 power bumps requiring reset of equipment. And again, we had another 3 events in August. The storms that we're having are more frequent, and we get a lot of high precipitation events where we'll get like almost a flash flood that'll cause a raw wet well high alarm. Also in August, we had a low chlorine alarm, which operators responded to. And just recently, we had a chemical spill alarm. And this one, the operator came in and the containment was filled. He was able to do a repair on one of the lines that had come loose. One of the ends of basically a fitting had broken and hypo had spilled out. So just looking at a bit of our data, filter compliance, since the media replacement last October, and I think it was completed in November, our compliance has been continually above 99%. Our chlorine residuals, 1-year history, these are from samples taken, not from instrumentation data, but we try and keep the chlorine between 0.8 and 1 leaving. Sometimes it's a little bit higher. We do try and use the trim chlorine at this time of year when the water is the warmest to ensure that we're achieving 0.2 at the far end at Kennedy. And the 3 bleeders are the colored lines below. Total organic carbon, year history. Again, the blue line is the raw water line at the top, and the red line would be the dual media removal, and then the green line is the treated. So we have that good removal through the dual media with the coagulant. And that's what we want to see. The treated could be lower if the GAC media was in better shape, but we're still getting adequate removal through the dual media. So the GAC media is planned for future replacement. And our historical THMs, we don't have the Q3 result yet. So this is the same as the last chart we would have looked at. And also the HAAs as well. And that's everything I have to report. Does anyone have any questions?
Mayor Sally?
I my question is more related to the actual presentation itself. Carla, it's excellent. My request is that this also be included in our e-scribe so that other council members can go and look at it, or we can look at it for historical reasons. It gives us an idea. It gives us a really good benchmark for the next quarterly meeting to see where we were and where we are. So if you could send that to Pam to include in the meeting package, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mayor Hagman. Does anybody else have anything? Mark?
Hey, Carl, just your new lead hand, are you able to share his contact information, or is he got the old lead hand phone, or he's reporting?
He's still working in the Sioux. Unfortunately, our hires, we've had a couple bumps, basically transfers from different departments. We had an operator advertised at the same time for Sault Ste. Marie, and we actually hired one of the wastewater operators from another department. So there's going to be probably about a month lag time before we have him on site here. But he will, yeah, we will have a phone for him. And the lead hand that we currently have in the Sioux is done at the end of September. So we'll probably flip his phone over to him, and I will provide that info as soon as we have it for you. So,
Yeah, he reports to Tyler though, direct. So still.
yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Mark again? I swear you're Columbo.
Flow testing, Carl. I know we were back and forth on some requests for flow testing, and if we need to have Tullux perhaps arrange for that, does PUC need to be on site?
I actually had a call with Olivia Tulloch just before the meeting, and yeah, she did say that they would arrange for flow testing, and we definitely want to know. She said they were planning to do 10 to 20 hydrants. We definitely want to know when they're here and whether we accompany them or not. We'll have to look at that a little further. So.
Jim, you're up next.
Thanks. Carl, I have two questions. I don't know if you're going to answer both of them, but living in a place here without air conditioning, and I know how humid it was. Those damage records in your storage area, was that from the humidity leaking, or and secondly, you know, is our roof holding up? These weren't roof leaks, correct?
No, we did have some previous events where we had replaced boxes and so there may have been some previous damage, but it was actually so humid in there. Like, we had puddles all over the plant, and the boxes that we had our records in, literally you could pick them up and they'd kind of fall apart. So we brought everything back to Sault Ste. Marie and dried it out, and I have admin staff sorting through what's required and what's our policies define how many years we have to keep items and where they have to be stored. So we're still in the progress of planning that, and we'll bring back the records that must be kept on site here. So
Thank
we'll
you for
probably
that.
keep them in the office area though, instead of in that back room.
My second question here for you is the ABT haulage of the sludge. Are we utilizing them more than we used to? And I believe I heard you say there was a pay increase on that. I'd just like to know how that's working out. I mean, I know they're utilizing that sludge that we're pumping out of there. I think so. And I'm just wanting to know if, you know, this adds up to who's paying the bill for this year haulage of the sludge.
PUC does have it in the contract that there's a limit for sludge haulage, and unfortunately our billing is more than a month behind. So because we start late in the year after the winter's down in runoff, I'm actually not quite sure where we're at, but the price more than doubled last year. And the other contractor that's available here through GFL also had previously increased their prices probably about by the same amount. So I think both contractors are probably equivalent right now. GFL also had their site unavailable for a period of almost 2 years. It is back up and running. We have only used ABT this year.
Thanks.
Okay, does anybody else have anything for PUC? Nope, seeing nothing, we're gonna go on to Tulloch Engineering, and Chris, you're up.
Thank you. Good to be here again. I'm just going to run through a quick highlight of the active projects we have on the go, kind of the key ones that are in the works. So starting on the water side of things, we have so kind of a combination of items. The water treatment plant, we're under the assessment with SEMA right now. As Carla spoke to, they've been on site, they did the review. There was actually some emails going around yesterday with some follow-up questions. So once we get that information back to SEMA, they can advance their reports more. So that was the intake source assessment, as well as a general facility review of the treatment plant. And combined with that, right now we're working with Katie on submitting an application for the Greenstream OSIP funding to hopefully secure some funding for a new intake, whether that's a well or a lake intake, whatever the results of the studies work out to be over the next several years. Also at the water treatment plant, we're going to be looking at the access stairs next spring for a rebuild on them. They're fine to get through this fall and the winter, but come next year, we'll be looking at replacing those. Also, the water tower assessment, we spoke to that. We'll be getting that tender out shortly for a look at it this fall. The system modeling is well underway. As Mark brought up there, we're looking at doing some flow testing now just to calibrate the model, make sure things are running the way we like them to. So we'll be out on site looking at 10 to 20 hydrants just to get that calibration completed. But the bulk of the information is inputted into the model. So once it's calibrated, that undertaking will be complete. I would think mid-October we should have, or mid to late October, by the time we get the flow testing done, we should have a fully functional model for the town system. On the wastewater side, the Haynes and Hawkins sanitary sewer replacement, that's been deferred for construction in 2022. We're still dealing with the railway with CP to get the approval. HCRY is on board. The Ministry of the Environment's on board. We're just waiting for that CP approval to come through, and then we can issue the tender this fall for a spring or for June 22 construction. At the sewage treatment plant, SEMA, again, they've submitted their technical memo to us back on the 9th of August. We've reviewed that with the town. They're also looking at the noise for the blowers. And that, in a nutshell, is the major items we're looking at right now. We're also going to piggyback an inspection of the sewage treatment plant intake or outlet, with the tower inspection. So that's those are the major projects we've got on the books right now.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Does anybody have any questions for Chris? Mayor Hagman, followed by Jim.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Chris for his assistance, to Katie for this ISIP funding application. If we could get $5 million towards changing our water intake, I will personally bring you a bottle of champagne, and we could be celebrating for sure. So I know it's due tomorrow. I know that you guys have got your work cut out for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm hoping that your phones aren't ringing and everything else so that you could just hunker down and get that application in there so we could be happy campers. Thanks.
Okay, Jim, thank you very much for Hagen.
Thank you, Chair Roy. Yeah, Chris, like, I guess what I want to ask you is if you've looked at some modeling per se, how is our water, if there was growth to be happening in this here town, you know, are we going to get caught? I mean, I know there's an alternative water, but I don't think that's going to affect the pressures. But we have adamant, would we have adamant amount of water for any subdivision growth, you know, in the town of Blind River, if it was to happen?
So that's where the model, once it's complete, is going to tell you how the different demands will reflect through the system. So if you know, 6 weeks from now, when that's complete, if you've got a development at the east side of town there, we can key that demand into the model to see if you have the supply capacity to get that much, you know, the needed quantity to that development or site, and how that is going to affect everything else, right? You start pushing more water somewhere else, you may lose pressure at another location. So that modeling will show the different changes in the system. But yeah, with once a new intake is put in place, a new source, then right now you're on I'd say a capacity constraint, just because the wells are going downhill. We're rehabbing wells steady, and they're never coming back up to installation or you know, initial installation volumes. They're always on the downhill slide. So once you don't have a supply issue, then you may be looking in the system at adding maybe a bigger tower, a taller tower, or some booster pumps somewhere to deal with pressure issues that may arise from different developments, or to address pressure issues that you have right now.
Thank you on that. I guess if I may, Chair Roy, part two of that would be I guess the STP end of it, and I don't know if you've done any looking over there, Chris, or maybe Carla might know. Same type of question with the modeling of an increase in maybe a new subdivision or something in this town. Are we set and ready to go, or are we capable, or are we looking at some growth possibly for this?
So at the sewage treatment plant, SEMA's looking at its capacity right now, and currently it can handle the average flows. The treatment plants can handle the average flows. It's the peak flows that we're getting from storm events, infiltration and whatnot that's, you know, inundating that plant. So they have a couple of different options that they're looking at to handle those peak flows. So I don't think it's a treatment capacity issue, but it could be a collection issue that the town has. So I'm actually working on putting a proposal together for Katie to do a similar exercise for the water. What we're doing, the water model, I want to do a sewer model as well, to see how a different, you know, if you had a development on the east end, can your existing network take that additional flow to the plant?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And thanks, Chris. Does anybody else have anything for Chris today? Seeing nothing, we're going to move on to Algoma Public Health. Paula, do you have something?
No, I don't have any.
You don't have anything. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? We're good. All right. Any administration reports or addendums? Katie, anybody? Anybody? No. Okay, so I guess no new business. Sounds right. Next, oh, Mark?
Not really new business, but I just wanted to let everybody know that we did respond to a water leak repair on Sherm a few weeks ago, and the fellows rectified that. But in their work over there, we actually found vacant lot curb stop that was in open position. So it had been running full bore for who knows how long. So hope that doesn't screw up your modeling there, Chris, too much, but yeah, I guess you'll get that with the flow testing anyway. So that's probably a bit of a positive to our add to our available capacity.
Did that cause any type of washout over there, Mark? Just for fun?
No, not any washouts, but like you say, that may have been leaking or turned on for, I have no idea for how long. Nobody is probably has visited that that curb stop for quite a while. And I guess just my other comment on the wastewater treatment plant and the inflows and infiltration. I mean, it is a concern here, but I have been doing a bit of research as well, just a bit on my own, and it's very common across most municipalities. So Oshawa or Niagara on the Lake is a similar issue, and it's been an issue for people to try and solve what's this inflow. Yeah, so it's not just a Blind River issue, but it's definitely one that we'd like to have solved as well. Just my comments.
All right. Thanks for that, Mark. Does anybody else have anything before we adjourn and decide on another meeting? No? Okay. So next meeting is when, Pam?
December 8th.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. We'll see you all there. Thank you for coming out. I adjourn this meeting at 10:37.